It's the Cool Kids Club. You've been invited to the Cool Kids Club. It's so exciting, yeah. Justin likes monsters, yeah. And Amy likes words in the Cool Kids Club. Cool Kids Club.
Hey, cool kids. Welcome to episode 55 of the Cool Kids Club podcast. I am one of your hosts, Justin.
And I am your other host, Amy.
Hey, girl.
What up? Hey, what up?
What up? I'm hanging out.
Yeah.
It's Mother's Day as we're recording this. So happy Mother's Day.
Yes, happy Mother's Day to all our moms out there. All our mom figures.
Our moms and mother figures.
Yeah.
In particular, our mom.
Yes.
Donna Juan.
Donna Juan, yes.
Happy Mother's Day to Donna Juan.
Happy Mother's Day. Best mom
I'll
in the
be
world.
seeing you in a few hours.
Yes, we will. We got an eclair cake going.
Oh shit.
Yeah, we're gonna have a good old time. I think the rain's gonna hold off.
Yeah.
So yeah, happy Mother's Day to everybody. I feel like I have to start this episode out by making amends.
You
with
you
our
received
community.
A little bit of backlash.
I sure did.
And I should say, backlash is putting it.
Not really, but
no.
Okay.
We had a couple people kind of call out our lack of attention to Jessica Simpson.
We sure did
in the last episode.
And
I'm gonna go ahead and throw you under the bus and say blame Amy because I didn't put that episode together.
That is true. It was me. That is true. You know, I was never a huge Jessica Simpson fan back in the day, so, I guess I wasn't giving the most unbiased report. I don't
know that you did your due diligence.
I did not. I think we probably talked about her the least amount in the episode, but I also felt like looking back during that time period, like not to speak of like their careers after basically 2004, but like looking back, I felt like she was the least like
you're
prolific.
Gonna do it again.
Well,
you're getting ready.
No,
to
but
do
I'm just
it again.
giving it an excuse, I guess, to why I didn't talk about her as much because I guess I thought there was
we were
less
here.
to
I don't
talk
think
about.
we were here for excuses.
Well,
I don't want to hear your excuses.
I'm sorry to all of you out there who love Jessica Simpson. I have nothing against Jessica Simpson.
She is unrepentant.
I just said I'm so sorry. I am repenting right now. I'm so sorry, guys. I never meant to hurt anyone.
Well, I'm glad we got that out of the way.
I need to type something out in my notes app and then post it, like all celebrity apologies.
Treat it like a big scandal.
Yeah, like a big scandal. Okay, we'll get that up on
honestly, what triggered this was I think two of our friends on social media pointed out some of the successes that Jessica Simpson's had.
They were like, "Is she?"
And stuff. And
now, to be fair,
we didn't cover any of that.
To be fair, we did not cover really much of anybody's later career.
That's true. That's true.
So yeah, I think Jessica Simpson has had lots more success not as a musician. She's had a lot more success as like a businesswoman. And I did say she was like an entrepreneur and stuff like that. So we just really didn't talk about anybody's later successes or careers. So
well, now we've talked about her for like 10 minutes on this podcast. So maybe that makes up for
I hope that
our glossing over
yes.
as it would be of
I
Jessica
am very,
Simpson.
very sorry.
Good.
Moving on.
Should be.
Let's talk about what the topic is today. Justin, what are we talking about today on the podcast?
Well, we're going back. We're bringing last fall we introduced School Daze.
Yes.
Which is an excuse for us to talk about where we spent so much of our time during our childhood school on the show. So what was
just
our first one? First one was Scholastic Book Fairs.
About school.
About school, reminiscing about being in school.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I spent like 2/3 of my day in the place, or
spent a lot of time there.
Yeah, a lot of
have a lot of good memories as well. Especially elementary school.
Yes,
have a lot of good memories. particularly for me before we moved from Florida. Really good.
Yeah, you didn't have as good of an experience after we moved, at least in elementary school. But like when we those golden years of the
golden
early 90s,
years.
we were at
Shout
Kings
out
Highway
Kings
Elementary.
Highway. Yeah, shout out Kings Highway.
Kings Highway, still there.
Still there. It's a magnet school now.
Kings Highway Magnet School. Yeah.
Yeah.
You look it up online, it's a school.
It is a school. That is where, and we have been back a few times. And in fact, I believe we posted on our Cool Kids Club when we've gone back.
Well, and I probably will be again here in the near future because I'll be actually down in Clearwater here in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
2 weeks?
2 weeks?
That's very true. That's very true. Yeah, we got one in. What are we at? Like 7 minutes? We got one in.
Yeah, 9 minutes. Let's
9 minutes. God, that took a while, actually. It's usually within the first 90 seconds.
I know. Well, we had the Jessica Simpson. We had Jessica Gate.
Yeah, and there's only one of her, so.
Right. So when we introduced School Daze, our series of retrospectives, I guess, on different aspects of school. That's a good way to put it. I like that. We did Scholastic Book Fairs, one of the most ubiquitous experiences I feel like.
Oh my God, yeah.
That we all share of all generations.
Yes. That was our doing one now because Buried episode. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, yeah. It was either that or a mailbag, I think. I don't remember.
Oh, Wishbone. Sadly, we're not talking about Wishbone today. I mean, we
could.
Wishbone was not usually on
if that's what you were reading during the summer. We are doing summer reading list today, and that's like, why are we doing a School Daze? Because school's over. As we're recording this, it's the middle of May, and I know you and I both work at an educational institution.
We sure do.
And school's out, baby.
Yeah, school is, and I mean, I know like primary school things like that are not. They're everything's wrapping up though. So we thought this was a good time. I've got some of my high schools people are graduating this weekend. I know like in different parts of the country they go up into June, but mostly May we're wrapping things up for the school year. So we thought now would be a good time to talk about your summer reading list, guys. Make sure that you are reading these books.
Yeah, you don't want to get out of the habit of reading.
Yeah.
Over the summer. And so, in order to do that, we're going to create a summer reading list for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please, now, you are, as our theme song says, Amy likes words.
I do love words.
You are the book queen. Tell us about your summer reading list memories, and we're just gonna kind of go through a bunch of these titles that we remember.
Yeah. I remember as a nerd, really like
being a huge nerd
just
myself.
Being a huge nerd, growing up a huge nerd. I mean, I've talked before about how I always loved reading. That was something that I feel like I learned to read really early. My mom kind of taught me how to read really early.
Donna Juan,
yes, shout out. Taught me how to read pretty early. I remember knowing how to read pretty well before we got to kindergarten, and so that was just always a big part of my life, and I always loved reading. And so when the summer reading list was sent out, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go down to the library and I'm going to get all kinds of books. And you would like...
So how did it work exactly? Because I know I remember certainly doing it, but like the details are honestly kind of fuzzy for me. Like, did there have goals? Was there different prizes you got?
I think that it was kind of like a 2-part thing where I guess it depends on the class and the teacher and probably the school and stuff. But like, I think a lot of times with the summer reading list, they wanted you to read certain things in preparation for the next year.
Okay.
Maybe not books that they were going over, but just like, or maybe sometimes books they were going to go over in the next school year. So I also think it was to keep you from getting out of the habit of reading. And also I think there was a part where, and I know they still do it like during the school year, where, if you read so many books, you get prizes. And I mean, this all tied in, of course, to Book It. So I think with like the summer reading list, you could come at the beginning of the school year and, if you had read so many of these books, you got prizes or you got, book it sticker.
Now, this is like honor system, right? Like,
I think that your parent was supposed to like initial or sign, but
okay.
Yeah,
but
basically. You could fake that pretty easily, or your parent could just say, "I don't give a shit," and they could just sign it. You know.
Oh, sure. Ours did,
but not me. Not me.
No,
I'm not about that. I would have been very honest about it because I would have actually wanted to do the reading. So yeah, I think that's kind of how the summer reading list worked. Do you remember it working differently?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't remember details. I remember we would have sheets that we would fill out and get like initialed by the parents. I guess that sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I mean, I remember obviously Book It, and we've discussed Book It.
Yeah, we've had a whole episode on Book It. Yeah.
Pizza Hut.
Our Pizza Hut episode. Yeah.
Large Book It heavy. So obviously I knew what the Book It program was and did that.
Yeah.
But I don't remember anything specifically. Like, these are the kinds of books that I'm thinking are like, I mean, yes, you would have, some series books and stuff like that you would, being nerds like we were.
Oh, sure.
And I was huge into reading.
You definitely were.
Just like you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, we were reading Goosebumps, Babysitter's Club. That kind of things. But these are the sort of books I'm thinking, like the Caldecott winners.
Yes,
the Newbery.
These are Newberries and our Caldecotts.
Newberries and Caldecotts.
Mm-hmm. These were like they
had the emblems on the front of the book.
This was literature.
Literature for children.
These were not books. This was literature.
Children's literature, young adult literature.
Young adult. It was usually sad or disturbing in some way.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a hallmark.
A lot of these are very grim.
Yeah.
And honestly, I just kind of threw together some that I thought of. So we're not going to talk about. There's tons of these books.
Yeah.
But I just kind of thought of like the ones that really stuck in my head. I'm honest. The first one that pops into my head, even though I know for a fact I didn't read this on a summer reading list because I remember reading it in class.
I did too.
In 7th grade in Miss Baker's class.
Yes.
Reading The Outsiders.
Oh my God, that's exactly where I read The Outsiders 2 years after you. In Miss Baker's 7th grade class. Yes. Yep, The Outsiders.
I loved The Outsiders then, and I love The Outsiders now. S.E. Hinton.
Yes. It's an incredible book. She wrote this when she was like 15, 16 years old.
Yeah. It's nuts.
In 1967, it's crazy, and
of course they made the movie. There was the movie.
Gonna say made into a wonderful movie in the 80s.
A wonderful movie
starring a slew of hotties. Just an absolute bevy of handsome men.
Well, tell us about some of the characters and the attractive 80s men that portrayed them in the movie.
Well, your main group, the group you're really following, is the Greasers. And that's who you're on their side. They're kind of wrong side of the tracks kids. Your main character, you got your pony boy Curtis. This was... I'm
going to pull up the cast of the movie.
Yeah. C. Thomas Howell played him in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Not really a hottie, but the other guys were hotties. You got your Soda Pop Curtis. Now, I can't remember who played who.
No, Soda Pop Curtis, that was Rob Lowe.
Oh, yeah. 80s Rob Lowe? You gotta be kidding me. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that we're just going to talk about the movie more than the book.
Yeah. Well, I've definitely read the book once and seen the movie about 3 or 4 times, so.
Okay.
You got Derry Curtis. Now, was that Patrick Swayze?
Derry Curtis is Patrick Swayze in the movie.
Yeah. And he's
there's Derry and Dally.
There's Derry and Dally.
Now, Dally is... So you got the Curtis brothers.
Yes.
You got Ponyboy. And then Derry is the older one, right? That's Patrick Swayze.
Yeah, he's like the older one. He's like not as involved. I feel like he's more like the mature one.
He's the parent figure.
Yeah, really.
As close to what they have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's this very much like 1950s socioeconomic, like the greasy kind of motorcycle boys from the wrong side of the track, and then your preppy, the socias.
Yeah, the socias, exactly.
But we should also mention you've got Johnny Cade played by Ralph Macchio in the movie.
That's right.
Now, Dally is Matt Dillon.
Do it for Johnny.
Do it for Johnny.
Yep. Now, who plays Two-Bit? Is that Tom Cruise?
Emilio Estevez.
Emilio Estevez. That's
Tom
right.
Cruise is one of the Socs. He's Steve.
Oh, that's right. He's a Soc.
Then,
that was when he
Diane Lane is Cherry Valance.
Yes, Diane Lane. Yes, she's such a babe in that movie.
Diane Lane is a babe in everything.
That's true. Diane Lane is a babe in everything. Yeah, so I'm sure, most of you have read this or are familiar with the concept, but this was definitely one that we read. Basically, there's a
I remember this
fight.
felt like a milestone book when you were reading it, because it was like everyone kind of talked like, "Well, we're finally reading The Outsiders."
I know, it was like the number one book everybody read in school. It was like the To Kill a Mockingbird of middle school.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was like,
yeah.
So, you can't get out of middle school without having read The Outsiders.
Yeah. So it was like, 7th grade, you're going to read The Outsiders. Because at the end, you watched the movie in class, I remember.
Yeah, we would watch the movie also. Yeah,
I think it was because up until that point, it's definitely darker. It's darker than probably the stuff you had read.
It's the darkest thing you'd read in school up to that point, because it's got murder. It's got
literal
violence.
murder.
It's got it's got a lot of taboo kind of stuff going on.
Yes, and even though there were things you'd probably read that were kind of dystopian or maybe something like that,
right,
this was more real life, dark and grim.
Yeah. And honestly, I still, even as an adult, I like it.
Oh, I do too. In fact, I
think it's very good.
I have a 50th anniversary. I have some special copy of it. That's really awesome, and I've wanted to reread it as an adult. I just haven't. But yeah, I mean, it's excellent. It's a great book. Yeah. Basically, it's like a gang wars basically between the Greasers and the Socs and Ralph Macchio.
Yeah, but you've got the great the sequence where they're hiding out in the church.
Yes.
Johnny kills one of the Socs, the big Soc who's trying to drown him in the park. Then they end up hiding out in the church. So they have to go in hiding. Yep. Pony Boy. They bleach his hair. He cuts his hair and bleaches his hair, and then there's the fire, and they end up saving kids from the fire.
That's right.
In the church.
That's right.
And then and then they have the big rumble.
There's a big rumble at the end. Yeah, you got to get all the Greasers and all the Socs together, and Cherry is stuck in the middle because Cherry kind of likes Pony Boy. Is that right?
Cherry is dating the main big bad guy Soc.
Yeah.
But she kind of likes Pony Boy.
Yeah.
She's like a rich Soc girl, but she is kind of not that shallow.
Yeah, she's nice.
And then when shit goes down, and they're the Greasers are hiding out from the Socs, she's kind of being a spy for the Greasers.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cherry's a great character too.
Cherry is a really good character. Yes.
I mean, Jesus, you get suicide by cop at the end of this book. You do. You have a character knowingly point an unloaded gun at cops so they will shoot and kill him. That happens at the end of this book.
Is it Johnny?
Johnny
dies at the end of this book, doesn't he? I mean, spoiler on a 70-year-old book.
Yeah, I think maybe he dies from the fire.
Oh shit, that's right, because that's the whole Do It for Johnny.
Do it for Johnny!
Is because he died in the fire, and so they get all together for the rumble, and it's Do It for Johnny.
Yes, and then they rumble.
Now
and as rumbles tend to go, it doesn't go well for most of them. So it's
who gets
dark,
killed
man.
by the cop? I don't remember that. Is it Patrick Swayze's character?
I want to say it's Derry.
Oh God. I'm gonna have to rewatch the movie and maybe reread the book.
Yeah,
it's a great story.
It is. I like it a lot.
And it really, I mean, at that age, you're really delving into some socioeconomic stuff.
Oh yeah,
it's very interesting.
There's a lot going on.
Now, what are some other books that?
Do you remember The Giver?
I mean, I'm very familiar with The Giver, but I never read it. So
you never read The Giver?
I never read The Giver. So, I mean, I should say I'm familiar with the cover of The Giver. I know that it's a big, like, summer, it's got the old man face on it.
It's got old man face on it. It
but
does.
But I've never read it, so I don't know what it's like a dystopian, right?
It's kind of a dystopian thing of this, like, society where they've eradicated pain and suffering, but basically in order to achieve this, they've taken away any sort of emotional depth. Like, there's no color in the world, there's no, like, climate, like, it never... there's no real terrain, it's just everything is plain and straight.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, and, like, so, and, like, all the, like, you have, like, a handbook that you have to, like, live by. And so our main character, who's this boy Jonas, like, you get to a certain age, and they, like, assign you your life's work.
Oh.
So he gets to, like, 13 or whatever, and he's excited because he's getting ready to be assigned his life's work. And then they, like, pull him out, and they're like, actually, we have a special job for you, and he's chosen as the receiver of memory, who is the one person who is burdened with the task of keeping the memory of everything of how the world was before the sameness took over everything.
That is too much for a 13-year-old boy to handle.
This book's awesome, man.
It sounds great. I don't know how it... I mean, I don't know how... I never read it. I don't know.
So he, of course, starts to become, like... And in order to be in this role, he has to, like, show his emotions around his parents and stuff, which is like forbidden, and or what ends up happening, and he's just kind of like dealing with all this turmoil of like learning what the world was like,
and he's never known a world that looks any different either, right?
Right. Yeah. learning about how like wonderful the best stuff in the world is, and then how terrible the worst stuff in the world is. Like, the giver is like the previous receiver of memory. That's old man face.
Oh, and so he's getting ready to die.
And so he's like instilling the memories on him.
Oh.
And so he's grappling with things like he'll experience, sunsets and puppies and babies being born and all of that. But then on the other hand, he'll experience war and famine and like,
oh my God, this is way too heavy for a 13-year-old boy. They had us reading this?
Oh yeah, I read this.
Okay, that's interesting. That's a lot.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, they did a movie of this a couple years ago and it flopped, right?
I didn't see the movie.
Yeah, I didn't see the movie either.
I didn't hear anything particularly great about it.
Yeah, me either.
But it's a great story.
I mean, it is I'm sure a Caldecott or a Newbery winner, as most of these are.
well, pick one out of the list here. What do you want to talk about?
I don't think our next one probably won any awards, or maybe it did.
It should have won all the awards. I'm sure it did.
All of them. Now these, we definitely didn't read these in school, but Sideways Stories from Wayside School.
I remember reading this, also 7th grade Miss Baker's class.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think they were like assigned reading.
Yeah.
But I think she had like a
little
class library that you could like check out books from.
Yes.
And that's where I got these.
I mean, I can remember Miss Johnson's library in 8th grade. Remember that like whole wall? Like she had like a whole wall that was books, and I read so many books in that class. I was just constantly checking books out from her library.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But I feel like we read Sideways Stories earlier than 7th grade as well. We read those when we were littler, right?
Yeah, that's my main, honestly, memory. I'm sure I did read them earlier, but I remember reading them, and I remember, honestly, one of the first times when Brian Wakefield and I first met each other.
Really?
Was in that class, 7th grade Miss Baker's class. We're really getting a focus on this episode.
We are. It's 7th grade Miss Baker's class, apparently.
Yeah, that's where I met Brian, and that's where we read Sideways Stories from Wayside School.
Wow.
By Louis Sachar.
Sachar.
1978.
1978. That's surprising.
So there's a whole series. There's Sideways Stories from Wayside School. That's the first one.
Okay.
In 1978. Then there's Wayside School is Falling Down.
Okay.
1989.
Yeah.
And Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger in 1995.
That's right.
And then a fourth one came out in 2020. Wayside School Beneath the Cloud of Doom.
Just when we needed it most. The Cloud of Doom being COVID.
COVID. It was COVID.
Louis Satchar was like...
Louis Satchar, we solved it, guys.
Yep. He was like, you know what? I'm going to save everybody. And he did.
And he did. Thank you.
That's how COVID ended, right? Louis
not all heroes wear capes.
That's
Louis
right.
Satchar released a fourth Wayside School book and saved us from COVID. They're so weird and so funny.
Yes, they are
and very so strange.
Funny. It's like mostly set in this one teacher's classroom, Miss Jewel.
Yep.
And
on the 30th floor.
30th floor. That is a big fucking school.
Well, that's the thing, is that that's the whole gimmick, is the Wayside School was supposed to be obviously like a horizontal building with like 30 rooms, one after the other. But the architect got it wrong and built it as a skyscraper that was 30 stories with one classroom on each floor.
You think it had an elevator?
No.
Well, that's not ADA compatible. That should have had an elevator.
Do you remember when there was that new kid and he was a jerk, and then at the end he turned out to be like a dead rat in a trench coat?
What?
Oh, yeah. I remember that one.
What were you smoking?
Every chapter is from a different characters. Most of them take place, like you said, in Mrs. Jewell's class, up on the top floor, the 30th floor. And each chapter was like a different student or character that worked in the school. Teachers. There was like Louis was based on Louis Sakar got the idea for these books apparently working at an elementary school for college credit. Fun. And so he has a character, Louis, who was like because he would supervise them at like recess.
Yeah.
And stuff. So he's like a character in the book who works at the school, and he's got like the multicolored mustache. I remember that.
Oh yeah.
I loved. Oh, I loved these. Yeah. And
these are great.
I bought these not too long ago, actually.
Yeah, I think I may have one or two of them as well.
I'm working on getting a little library of like kids books going, and it's mostly Goosebumps, but I'm getting some other stuff in there
like
too.
95% Goosebumps, but
well, to be fair, I started out with a lot of Goosebumps. So.
That's true. You had a lot left over from childhood. Now getting back to some of the more Caldecott Newbery.
Very Caldecott, very Newbery.
Yes. Now this is another book that was real hot, but I feel like this was a boy book. Now, of course, I could have read this.
It was a boy book.
This is a boy book, and this was Hatchet.
Yes. Who just passed away not too long ago, last year, I think.
He did. That's right. Now you read Hatchet. I can picture the cover of Hatchet.
I have. Hold on.
Oh. He's got it.
Keep talking. Podcast is still rolling.
He's got it. Okay, he's going to get it. I'm going to tell you about Hatchet. So this one follows Brian, and he is the child of divorced parents. And so he has this like single engine plane, and he's going to go spend the summer with his dad. And the pilot of the plane ends up having a heart attack, and so Brian has to crash land the plane. And it's like a whole survival story. Did you come back? Are you there?
I'm here.
You're here?
I'm here. Look at that. Hatchet.
Yes! That's the cover I was thinking of. I've told everyone about the story of Hatchet.
Oh, okay, good.
Well, I got to the point where it's a survival story. And he has only a raincoat and a hatchet. And he's
and then there's the whole element of like his parents' divorce.
Yes.
Because he had like seen his mom cheat on his dad.
Oh, really?
Or something. Yeah. So
I'm telling you, divorce in the like so many of the Babysitters Club book, I feel like there was just like a lot of like a lot of characters with divorced parents. That was like a very big thing.
The boomer generation, that was when they were hitting the age where you get divorced. And so there was probably a lot of them.
Yeah, I guess that's probably true. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I never read this one.
You never read Hatchet?
No, never read Hatchet. Never read Call of the Wild, which I know we'll talk about. But all those like boy books, I never read those. Yeah.
That is sexist.
Well, I know.
Hatchet's
I guess
good.
I just wasn't drawn to them.
That airplane, when the plane crashes in Hatchet, that's harrowing shit, man.
Oh, I bet it is.
Yeah.
I bet it is.
I've never read any of the sequels. There are several sequels to the Hatchet.
Oh, really?
And I've never read any of them. But I was reading about them just briefly today. Mm-hmm. And I thought that, okay, so there's the first sequel. So the original Hatchet comes out in 1986. Mm-hmm. The first sequel is called The River in 1991.
Okay. Is he still out there at the end of the book?
No, he gets he basically is out there for the entire summer.
Okay.
By himself, and he like learns to hunt and feed himself and shelter himself and all of that.
Okay.
And then he ends up like finally after like 3 months realizing, hey, the plane had stuff on it. I should get the stuff out of the plane, I guess.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Or something like that. And he gets like this emergency transponder, and like it ends up getting picked up by this airplane, and he gets rescued.
So what are the other books about?
It's kind of got a Deus Ex Machina ending, which was a big criticism of it.
Where
it just sort of ends. Like he gets rescued and it ends and that's it.
Oh.
So which was a big criticism of it. They which I'm bringing that up because we're not going to talk about it in the second one. We're going to talk about it in the third one. The second one is called The River, and is this weird story about how the government takes him back to the wilderness to like have him teach them his survivalist tactics.
What?
And there's like he's out there with like a government agent and shit.
That's real weird.
It's real weird, and the third book completely retcons it. It acts like it doesn't exist and never happened.
And so Brian's Winter is just he never gets rescued and he's still out there?
Well, so you get then the trilogy of sequel, the trilogy sequel, Brian's Winter, Brian's Return, and Brian's Hunt. And those follow the same story. Brian's Winter
and then Brian's Song.
So what they do...
It's where he dies of cancer.
It's the one where he dies of cancer. Yes. Yes. So Brian's Winter, because the ending of Hatchet was such a... that was kind of a criticism of it, of just like the Deus Ex Machina ending.
Yeah.
Brian's Winter imagines an alternate timeline where he does not get rescued at the end of the summer, and like what would have happened as it had kept going. And that's what those, like, the trilogy is about.
Interesting. So they basically are like, the ending of the book and the second book just never happened.
Yeah, like, what if he hadn't gotten rescued at the end of the first book? Ignore the second book completely. Here's what would have happened if the story kept going.
Alrighty, this is sliding doors.
It is a sliding doors
situation. Okay, cool. Well...
Now, I know you want to talk about boy books. Let's talk about a girl book. Let's talk about Island of the Blue Dolphins, because this is a girl book.
And that
now,
is Island of the Blue Dolphins.
And I know no one who's listening can see this. I have right here my copy
of Island of the Blue Dolphins.
Island of the Blue Dolphins.
I definitely still have my copy of Island of the Blue Dolphins.
It has
as well.
the Newbery Award on the front there, Amy.
There you go.
Yep. What's tell us about Island of the Blue Dolphins, because this is a girl book.
This is a girl book. I will say that I remember almost nothing about it. I read it a very long time ago. This was from 1960, so this had been, I feel like, a summer reading list type book for a long time. But this follows a girl.
Yeah, some of these are not. Yeah, were not. Yeah, some of these
contemporary.
At the time.
This follows a girl named Karana, and she is stranded on an island on the coast, off the coast of California, for years. And this is supposed to be based on a true story.
It's not supposed to be. It is based on a true story.
Okay.
I was reading about the real lady.
Really?
She was an indigenous woman who ended up stranded on this island off the coast of California for like 20 years.
Holy shit.
And then,
this is another, like, this is a survival book.
Yeah,
this is another, like, survival book, but it
Stranded
also
on an island.
on, like, it has very feminist themes as well, and, like, talks about, like, particularly, like, the plight of Indigenous people, the experiences of Indigenous people. So I don't remember a lot about this. I mean, I feel like I read this in elementary school one time.
I think I read this one too. Yeah, probably one time.
Yeah. I feel like this is one that Mom maybe had also read in school and told me about.
Yeah, well, it was... Mom probably read this and Mr. Popper's Penguins.
Mr. Popper's Penguins.
She was big on Mr. Popper's Penguins, which was also a summer reading list book.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Mom loved Mr. Popper's Penguins and was always trying to get us to read it.
Well, and here's the thing. To this day, Donna Juan gives me shit for not reading Mr. Popper's Penguins when she wanted me to read Mr. Popper's Penguins. Yeah, except here's the thing. I read Mr. Popper's Penguins. She's a Popper's Penguins pusher is what she is.
Yeah, she is.
I read it, though.
I also
never read it. I'm not getting credit for having read it. I did read Mr. Popper's Penguins, and I'm not reading it again.
You did read it?
Yes. And she still gives me shit for not having read it. She won't believe me that I read it. And I'm not going to reread it.
Sounds like that's like a personal problem.
I know.
I have not thought of Mr. Popper's Penguins in 20 years, but I also really just enjoy saying Mr. Popper's Penguins.
Mr. Popper's Penguins pusher.
Mr. Popper's Penguins. What was the other, like, big boy book that everybody read?
The big boy book.
I just mentioned it a few minutes ago.
You did.
Call of the
Wild?
Call of the Wild, yeah. This was written in 1903?
Yeah, Call of the Wild's old. Like,
I didn't know it was that old.
Jack London was, like, in the Yukon Gold Rush, I think.
He was long dead by the time we were reading this, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
No, Call of the Wild was awesome. You never read Call of the Wild?
Never read Call of the Wild. I think I've seen the movie, or parts of the movie.
Man, Buck.
Now, you were a big Call of the Wild and White Fang.
Yeah, White Fang is kind of the companion piece.
Yeah.
So it's not a sequel necessarily, but it's a follow-up and spiritual successor.
Does it take place in the same time period, just different characters?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which one do you remember liking better?
Call of the Wild.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Call of the Wild is, it's good. He's, it's all about a dog. And he gets, like, starts out in California, I think, and then he, like, he's, like, this domesticated animal who then gets, like, stolen from his home. And, like, sold off to, like, the sled dog trade. Which is a huge thing in Alaska because it's in the middle of the gold rush.
Yes.
And then he ends up escaping, and then it's about his, like, return to the wild. Like, how he goes from, like, domesticated to, like...
But isn't there, like, a boy? Or is that White Fang?
I think White Fang has the boy character. There are human characters, obviously, in Call of the Wild, too, but yeah.
Okay. So I was trying to remember, like, what's the thing with, like, telling them to go away? Like, telling them they have to... Is that White Fang? Where the boy has to tell the dog to, like...
That's Harry and the Hendersons.
No!
Yeah.
I know it's also in Harry and the Hendersons, but I think it's White Fang as well. I think Harry and the Hendersons was pulling a White Fang. Don't make me talk about Harry and the Hendersons. It's too sad.
Will Harry and the Hendersons make you cry?
It really upset me as a kid. It was one of those.
Okay,
like,
well, we need to move. We need to move
where
this
I would
up
be
in
like,
the movie
I know
club.
it's gonna be good, and then it's gonna make me really upset and uncomfortable at the end.
You're rubbing your face anxiously as you say this. You're having a visceral reaction to Harry and the Hendersons.
It makes me so sad. John Lithgow, why would you do that? Anyway, Call of the Wild. They just recently made another movie of this with a CGI wolf, because of course they did.
Of course. Yeah.
Or dog. I'm sorry.
Dog.
It had Harrison Ford in it, and a dog.
Was that Call of the Wild? I guess it was Call of the Wild.
I think so.
It was close enough.
Yeah, it was one of those.
One of them dog movies.
That was also... You know one that I loved, and I remember reading it in Miss Johnson's 8th grade class.
Okay.
Was The Chocolate War.
Now, I have never read The Chocolate War.
Ooh, really?
Really?
Ooh, this is Robert Cormier, 1974. There's also a Return to Chocolate War, but I don't know if that's... There's a second one, I think.
It's CW2, like World War II.
This one is, it's basically like a candy bar selling contest, like you'd have, it's like fundraising type things, but this is set in like a fictional Catholic high school, and
this sounds wild. I've never read this, but putting a few notes together here, I was like, this sounds wild.
It's basically like they're selling these chocolate bars, but in like a healthy fundraising competition type thing, like, oh, who can sell the most, whatever. But there's like this student organization, and they've like manipulated it, and basically it turns into like a real like mob situation, like a mob mentality. And you've got like one student named Jerry, and he like won't comply with what they want to do, and it gets really dark. Yeah, and there's like a secret
This is
society,
heavy material. Yeah, there's like a secret society.
Very heavy material.
And like it's like a cult leader type of thing in this school.
Yeah. Yeah. Return to Chocolate War. What is the name of the second?
Return to Chocolate War.
What's that? Return to something mountain. Escape to
Which mountain?
Candy Mountain. What is it called?
Well, I think you're confusing Escape to Witch Mountain and Big Rock Candy Mountain, the hobo song.
Now, those are the same things in my mind.
They're not.
Return to Witch Mountain's what I'm thinking of. The Chocolate War sequel. Beyond the Chocolate War. Beyond the Chocolate War.
Like Beyond Reanimator.
Yes, exactly.
Compared it to a separate piece in Lord of the Flies. Okay, well, I've read those, so maybe I should read Chocolate War.
It's good. I have it. I have a copy of it because it was one of my favorites. I remember really liking it.
I'll read Chocolate War if you read Hatchet.
Okay.
Deal.
Oh, we should do that.
Deal.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. What are some others that you remember reading?
Now, I cannot believe you don't remember this one, because April remembered this one. In fact, it was one of the ones she said when I asked her, like, hey, which one of these types of books do you remember? She's A Day No Pigs Would Die.
I mean, I've heard of it, but...
Now, this is a grim and sad one, too. Bleak.
God, they're all grim and sad.
Bleak. Robert Newton Peck, who's writing, like, kind of an autobiographical story. This comes out in 1972, and I thought it was interesting. This was one of the first books to officially be categorized as young adult fiction.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So, like, even like The Outsiders is, before this. Like, this is this is one of the first books to have that, like, official distinction.
That actual
It's considered
name.
one of the first.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a depressing ass story. Like how fucking hard and bleak life in the country on a farm is in like the early 20th century.
Oh,
like this kid ends up like helping this pig give birth, and then he gets to keep one of the pigs as a thank you, and then they can't get any money out of it, and it won't have kids, and so the dad ends up having to kill the pig even though he doesn't want to, and the kid doesn't want him to. And then
it's called A Day No Pigs Would Die, and you're telling me pigs die in this book?
Pigs die. Pigs die.
That's unacceptable.
Pig dies. Pig dies.
No, this is false advertising.
Pig dies, and then dad dies.
Jesus Christ.
So you get a real triple header of desperation and depression.
Oh my God, this is
so number one.
This is not on our list, Justin.
Okay.
But I literally, just you talking about this has made me think of a book, and let me make sure that I am getting the title correct. But I read it in 7th grade.
Is it
Miss
Charlotte's
Baker's
Web?
class, Where the Lilies Bloom.
That sounds very familiar.
I was just thinking about how the dad dies. I think the dad dies in that book too. And it is a very, like, life on the farm,
Right.
like everything. Rural North Carolina, a father dies, leaving his 4 children orphans. Rather than go to the authorities and wind up wards of the state, they decide to fend for themselves.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever read it, but I remember it
the
being,
oldest
I remember
one's
that
like
title
15, and so she like takes care of them.
Yeah, so see, it's just this
I remember that.
subgenre of depressing. This is your blue collar summer reading list books here.
That's right.
You're Where the
That's
Lilies
right.
Bloom. Your days no pigs would die, and which pigs die.
Except pigs die.
Well, you get a real triple header of depression and desperation at the end of A Day No Pigs Would Die, because first pig dies, and then dad dies, and then just to rub salt in the wounds, they're like, oh, by the way, after dad dies, the son finds out his dad was like trying to teach himself how to read, just to make it sadder.
Jesus Christ. No, thank you.
Now this had a.
I'm going to continue to not read this book.
This had a sequel in the 90s, also called A Part of the Sky, which I also read.
Was it good?
I don't remember A Part of the Sky really much at all. I think I read it. I want to say I read these in an Upward Bound class in the summer.
Really?
One year in high school.
Okay.
So probably like my first, like maybe like sophomore. So I might have been like, I don't think I was a little old for it. Maybe slightly too old for it, but it's pretty grim. So God. Even if I was reading Stephen King at the time, I was still like, hell yeah, this is depressing as shit.
Well, I feel like as a generation, we like to complain about a lot about how like we were not prepared for the bleak adult world.
Sure.
And I'm like, you know what? We weren't paying enough attention to these books, because I think we actually were trying to be prepared for how depressing and awful everything was, but we were not listening.
Hey, speaking of depressing and awful, I want to talk about another of my favorites, On My Honor. Which I have right here. With its,
Justin, you have mentioned this book before.
Newbery Honors. Yes, I have mentioned this book on the podcast.
Yes, because we talked about this, I think, during the Scholastic Book Fair.
We probably did.
Episode, or the book it won.
Yeah. So this, I haven't had, like, my best friend die on me in my life yet, so far. Yet.
Brian Wakefield, look out.
But, there was like the 1-2 punch of this book, On My Honor, and that episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark, where the shiny red bicycle.
Yes!
And I remember when I was a kid having a very vivid dream that was kind of, I think, based on that Are You Afraid of the Dark episode.
Yes, okay.
And it sent me into an emotional tailspin for a while. As did this book. As did On My Honor. Which I read as... I remember being in Florida when I read it, so it was elementary school.
Okay, so definitely younger.
Definitely elementary school. So this is about these two boys, Tony and Joel. Tony! Pretty boy. Tony.
Yeah.
They want to go rock climbing over at this starved rock cliff.
Much like Tony.
Yeah, and there's like a river that goes through, and Joel's dad tells them that he can go, but he can't go past Starved Rock Cliff because like the terrain gets really rough, the river gets really rough, like he doesn't want him playing around up there. And so Joel says, promise on my honor, won't do it. And then of course they do it. And Tony's like real like kind of competitive and pushing him, and Joel's sort of like, I don't want to be a pussy. I'm scared, but I'll do it, you know? And so they end up deciding to have a swim contest and the river, Tony gets Joel gets to the other side and turns around, Tony's gone. And Tony's gone. And then the rest of the book is just like the fallout of his death. And like,
good God.
And like Joel like dealing with the death of his best friend, and then the dad also dealing with it as he feels responsible because he let them go. Yeah. And it's just, depressing. It's our most depressing episode.
As shit. This is just a real bummer of an episode. I mean, why don't we just go right on into talking about Bridge to Terabithia then? Because
I was gonna say, I've got Bridge to Terabithia on the list here. I've got Face on the Milk Cart, where we want to go.
Let's do Bridge to Terabithia next.
Which I have never read.
Oh, Jesus. I have read this. This is Catherine Patterson. 1977. This is two best friends, Leslie and Jesse, and they have like they've created this like magical forest kingdom in their imaginations called Terabithia. And I think they have to like swing over on this rope swing or whatever to get there.
Okay.
And I remember at the end of the book, I don't know which one it is, they swing on the rope swing and it breaks and they like fall into the river and they die. And it's real fucking depressing. Let me figure out which one it is. It's Leslie. Yeah, she goes to she's trying to go over to Terabithia alone and without Jesse, and the rope snaps and she falls down into the river and dies. But this one, I feel like there was also something going on with one of them, like one of their parents was getting divorced. There was some like real life tragedy,
domestic drama
on. Yeah, domestic drama is a really good way. But yeah, anyway, one of the kids dies. Classic.
Classic.
Just a classic.
Yeah, no, I never read this one.
Apparently, Catherine Patterson was inspired to write this book because her son's friend was struck dead by lightning when he was like...
We're going to have to do something to pep this episode up because this is depressing.
This is a real bummer. Well, we've got some Beverly Cleary books we can talk about, which are definitely more...
look...
happy.
Yeah. Beverly Cleary is going to have to be your whole episode.
We'll definitely have to do a whole episode on her.
Just I read countless Beverly Cleary books. Yeah. That's not true. You could count them. But
you could. You
could count them. The Henry Higgins and
Ramona and
Ribsy and Ramona Quimby and Beezus.
Ramona Quimby, age 8. Yeah.
Do you remember Ellen Tebbets, Otis Spofford?
Yep. Ribsy
the
dog.
Mouse
and the Motorcycle.
The Mouse and the Motorcycle. Socks the cat.
Everything Beverly Cleary did was great.
Yes.
Let's just say it.
Yes.
Everything she did was wonderful. There were definitely some of those. Now, a couple of... Okay, so I do want to talk about Face on the Milk Carton. But it's...
Okay, so I want you to talk about these. We've got two here. Face on the Milk Carton and Go Ask Alice, which I have not read. Neither of them.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't read either of these.
So Go Ask Alice, I read in Miss Johnson's class in 8th grade.
Okay.
And it's by Anonymous.
Yeah.
But it's not really. So years later it came out that, this woman named Beatrice Sparks had written it. And it was touted as, we found this real girl's diary about her falling into drug addiction.
Okay.
And we've published it. We don't know whose it is, but it's published.
So this is like a found footage movie. This is like Blair Witch Project.
Exactly. Exactly. But then, of course, there was always sort of like questions about whether it was actually authentic.
Right.
And where this came out in 1971, like, I remember it was very, like, or not I remember reading about how it was very taboo in the 70s and 80s and stuff, and, like, because it deals with drug addiction, and it's, like, some really, like...
Heavy shit, stuff. Which is the theme of this episode.
Exactly.
Heavy subject.
And, yeah. So I remember it being kind of like, for years it was believed that it was like a real thing, a real diary, and it's supposed to be very cautionary tale.
Sure.
Don't do drugs, basically.
Just saying that.
And it's years later that it came out that, of course, it really is not. It was written by a woman named Beatrice Sparks. But it is like a found manuscript style fictional, thing, which is very much, maybe not to that extent, but that's definitely like something that we do in literature now, of just like, we found this. Mm-hmm. This is supposedly
it's not special anymore.
It's not special anymore, but in 1971, that had really never been done.
Yeah.
But I do remember reading that and just being enthralled by that in 8th grade. And also Carolyn B. Cooney, Face on the Milk Carton.
OCB Cooney.
Which had, this also had a couple sequels, and had, Carolyn B. Cooney did a lot of great books. She did I Know What You Did Last Summer. She did a lot of good, like, thriller, kind of, like, mystery, like, horror adjacent, I feel like, type of things.
Thrillers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah. But the Face on the Milk Carton, I loved it. It had like a made-for-TV movie as well that I also loved.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's about this 15-year-old girl named Janie Johnson, and she sees at school one day her face on a milk carton, because as you all probably know, that used to be like they would put missing children's faces on milk cartons, and she saw herself, what she thought was herself, on a milk carton with a different name. So she starts to suspect her parents may not be who they say they are.
Bum, bum, bum.
And it turns out her parents, who were very like affluent, people, kidnapped her when she was a little kid. Like, I think like at a shopping center or something like that. Classic, that's what we were all terrified of.
Oh, yeah.
And she actually comes from this whole other family in New Jersey. And like, I don't know if it's in this book or one of the sequels that she goes and like meets that family, and like they're like, oh my God, like we've, and I remember in the movie it was like she had red hair and her whole real family had red hair. And so she like fit right in with like all these like redheaded people, and she had like several brothers and sisters and all this stuff, but she had been kidnapped when she was like 3 or 4 or something. Like, she didn't really remember, but I loved it. So it's not really a depressing one. It's a really interesting mystery type one.
Yeah, very cool.
It's a good one.
I'll be honest, there's several of these that I'm like, just in talking about them and kind of reading about them in preparation for this episode, I'm like, I mean, there's ones that I would like to reread that I read, but I mean, there's several of these that I'm like, that sounds awesome as shit.
Oh, yeah. And she also, Carolyn B. Cooney did, let me see. Oh, the sequels to this are Whatever Happened to Janie and What Janie Found.
Okay.
Yeah. The Voice on the Radio. She did that one too. She did a lot of really like thrillery type ones. Mm-hmm. Well, are there any others that you want to talk about here that you remember so vividly?
I feel like we've hit a lot of the big ones that I remember. Yeah. There were certainly others, Mm-hmm. A Wrinkle in Time is a big one. I feel like The Indian in the Cupboard's a big one. I read
that as an adult. I did not read that.
A Wrinkle in Time?
Yeah. I didn't like it.
No. I think I read it when I was a kid. But I don't remember it, so I may not have.
It was too confusing for me as an adult.
I don't
understand. I also didn't love the movie that they did recently.
Well, that's not shocking.
No.
There's most of these movies that they've made are not very good out of these books. Ender's Game is another one that comes to mind.
Yes.
Though Ender's Game is a little bit different than what we're talking, like that's more like straight sci-fi. But same
time period that we're kind of talking about, though, for sure. Yeah. So but I want to hear on social media, and we'll have to have maybe in our stories or something, I want to hear other people's summer reading lists that they remember. What books on their summer reading list do they remember reading? So maybe we can do like
Donna Juan's going to respond with Mr. Popper's Penguins.
She's going to, I know, Mr. Popper's Penguins.
Chastise me for not reading it.
Yep. Julie and the Wolves. Julie of the Wolves.
Oh, God, yeah.
Julie of the Wolves.
Yulie.
Yeah.
Yulie of the Wolves.
Yulie. Yep, that was
Yulie
another one. That was another one. Yep. But yeah, God, I've got a hanker now to read some depressing shit from the 1970s.
All right, now I'm feeling depressed.
Oh, you really brought down Mother's Day. Really put a damper on it. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening.
Yeah. She'll understand when we get there, and we're just not feeling it.
Yeah. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? Well, we just spent the whole morning talking about how Joel's friend Tony drowned, and
pigs died.
He was racked with guilt for the rest of his life, and
yeah,
pigs died. It said right in the title that no pigs died. And you're telling me that pig died.
No, it's like a day no pigs would die. Like, you want to, it's a goal. You want to get to.
It's a goal!
I want to get to the day where no pigs die.
So it's an aspirational title.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, it's very misleading.
Well, that
It sounds like it's a book about a day in which no pigs die. Which sounds like a good day to me. Now, I do love
pork.
bacon. I do eat pork. But I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about how I got to that point.
Okay.
Let's wrap this up. If you want to hear more about some depressing summer reading list books, and just lots of other cool topics, you should go to iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts and look at the last 54 episodes that we have done of Cool Kids Club.
Oh,
if you
yes.
enjoyed this one. So check us out on there. Go leave us a review. That would be amazing. That's definitely a way that you can help us and support us. Check us out on social media at Cool Kids Club Pod on Instagram and Twitter. You can also find us on Facebook if you search for Cool Kids Club Podcast.
You can, if you get a hankering to, follow me personally on social media at Lousy with Ghosts. You can follow Amy on social media as well at Amy Reads TN. And by social media, I mean Instagram. And pretty much just Instagram.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you, as always, to Brian Haygas Wakefield for our theme song. All of our theme songs. Being a cool guy. Going and seeing Guardians of the Galaxy 3 with me this week.
I still haven't seen it. I'm so behind.
Yeah, I've been catching up on some movies this week that I've missed.
I did watch Evil Dead Rise last night.
I watched it yesterday as well.
We will discuss.
Very, very violent.
Thank you all so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed this episode where we got real fucking depressed. I hope everybody else got really depressed about it.
Yeah.
And I hope you have just have a great day.
How do you say, like, stay cool, like Eeyore?
Like, stay cool.
Stay cool.
I guess stay cool. If you have to.
Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow. I can go anywhere, friends to know and ways to grow, a reading rainbow. I can be anything. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading